Alright, we are back in the Hall of Ascension, and it's been quite some time for anybody that's fairly familiar with my clan and game. Now, we chose to transfer servers, and then we stayed Shadows for a period of time, and this was just because we actually find it more enjoyable, and that the benefits of being immortal aren't quite worth it. So we're going to see how much, if anything, has changed, and there's a few things that I've noticed in just the 2 days that I've been in Immortal so far. First off, I want to point out, and we'll talk more about this in a sec, but you actually get the quest during the Immortal tasks on day 1 to complete Kions as a practice so that you're familiar with it. However, the Kions event itself actually does not unlock for a little bit longer, so it kind of seems off there, the timing, and this will make more sense as we get further in this video. Another thing I want to show here is the required combat rating for difficulty 1 is 14,180. This is very low, okay? In fact, if anybody is watching this who does not meet that combat rating, I would love to know. I would just like to see how many players are out there even watching content that might not meet 14,000. And I'm sure that some exist, and I'm not trying to single anybody out. I just want to know what percentage, how small is the number of players that don't meet this. And as long as everybody else is above that, this is very, very easy. Now, this will scale as the difficulty increases, and I can't show where that will scale to. But the reason this has been on my mind is because the combat rating on legendary items has capped, right? And the set pieces have a capped combat rating for each difficulty. So this was something I wanted to take a look at and see if this was going to continue and increase, or had this been adjusted for having now maximum rolls on the legendary pieces that you'll find from each difficulty. So we're about to enter into Inferno 2, most likely during this reign. So we'll actually see how that transitions as well towards the final difficulty compared to the new combat rating pieces on those. So this is really just something I want to kind of keep in mind, but I wanted to mention this at this point. Anybody who's becoming an immortal or looking at becoming an immortal, you should have very little difficulty. Even if this scales by, 1,000 per difficulty, this will still be a non-factor. It would really need to go up dramatically to become so difficult that you had to kind of plan groups or organize who goes to which run. The way this stands, I actually like it. In fact, I prefer that it has a lower combat rating requirement. That way everybody can participate, feel like they're contributing. You don't have to go through that micromanaging of organizing who can go. You can just kind of open it at convenience. I liked planning it out when the event was new and the game was young, but at this point it kind of just makes sense with players not online as much as they used to be. It's kind of nice to just say, hey, we're running Kions at these times. People show up, they enter in, and it doesn't matter if one group has 15 players, one group has 25 players, you can still complete the event. And it's just kind of nice in my opinion. Alright, now we're over on the other side at the vault. And what's interesting about this is there were some changes made where you can now defend the vault on day 1 as immortals. And this made sense, right? You can protect what you've got into there based on, the number of rifts you've been running and collecting and so forth. And there were some situations before where Shadows could raid the vault without any immortals defending it. So you can now defend it. However, the quest to practice defending it for anybody that's new, unfamiliar, or it's just been a while, doesn't unlock until day 2. And this kind of seems backwards, right? We get to practice Kions, which doesn't unlock till later on the first day, but the vault, which unlocks day 1 now, we don't get to actually practice or see how it works if we're new until day 2. So I feel like these should be swapped. Now, the other thing that was odd about this when I went in to practice it, and I've noticed this before in the past on previous reigns, you actually only defend against 3 shadows. Why don't we just have a 4th practice or mock shadow in there? Just because that's the way the groups work, right? So you fight off one shadow, you fight off another, and then you get to the third. Maybe that final set could just have 2 shadows and they have a little bit of teamwork in there as opposed to just being 3 solo encounters. I don't know, just something that I thought of in the topic of vault as well. And this is going to be really where we kind of spend the majority of the rest of this video. If we go into strategy, for anyone that's not familiar, and then into the vault, you can see the items here. Now, you also have an options menu there where you can select your class. You know what I would love to see with the ability to change classes and potentially so many people loving this shorter class change cooldown that we've had with the release of Blood Knight. Now, do I expect that we're going to probably get 24-hour cooldowns for class change? I don't think so. I unfortunately don't have any info on that, but I think that we probably won't see the 7-day cooldown forever, right? Maybe we see something in between. But what I would love to see here is just tabs for each class individually. Say a wizard tab, a necro tab, a demon hunter tab, and so forth, as opposed to just my class. This way we could kind of sort through. If we were planning on class changing, you could look at items, see if maybe nobody had a certain essence selected. You could choose that one as you class change. This would just really improve the functionality of this. Another thing involved here that's been here since the onset of the game, right, is we've had the ability to select set pieces. However, when we select these set pieces, there's obviously nothing here for anybody that's been an Immortal. They don't exist. You can't have set pieces go into the vault. And I think this is probably the easiest transition, or one of the better ideas, really. People always complaining, myself included, that the benefits of being an Immortal aren't worth it, right? It's just so much easier to be a Shadow. You get very minimal extra for going to the Immortal side. Well, what if we actually introduce set items to the vault? Wouldn't this be a big appeal? Especially as we enter in towards a new difficulty here with Inferno 2, and with them being 10 weeks to the next difficulty after that, it would be very nice to have access to pick up some of these set items from your vault loot at the end of each week. So I think this would be potentially a good idea. I don't know how everybody else feels about that, but in general, I think it would be nice. You could kind of see all the ones in there, select which one you might be missing, and know what the roles are. So as opposed to crafting, where you typically just get a bunch of junk for the most part, you craft 10, 11 of the same item, and you get nothing worthwhile. Well, if you see one that's worthwhile, you could then choose to invest time that week defending the vault, and I'm sure other people would be as well. So there'd be a little competition and get more people just involved in it as well, which is what we want, right? We don't want to just have one person defending the vault, right? The idea is to have everybody participating, and that kind of builds a community, that kind of makes the game, right? The more people playing, the more people actively doing things, the better. So I'd love to see that personally. And just a couple of changes on the interface here. Some changes, like I said, to what can actually be added. Now, do I think we should be adding set items from running the Elder Rifts like we add the legendary items? I'm not sure. Maybe they could even add in a different manner of getting those set pieces in that would involve more players of the allied clans, perhaps. Something like running a dungeon with 4 Immortals, you know, running raids with other Immortal players, the Inferno Gauntlets. These are just ideas that I'm throwing up, but there would be other ways to kind of tie this in, that by grouping with other players, again, increasing the activity of everybody kind of included here, this would be ways to kind of put these items in, and that would be a little bit different than how you add them for Elder Rifts, and you could obviously make a separate section as well, so that you have X amount of spaces for legendary items, X amount of spaces for set items, and it would make use of this interface. Otherwise, this just needs to go away, right? If we're not going to add set pieces here, there's no reason to be able to sort by them. Like I said, change this into something where you can see all classes, and then you could even go and sort by set pieces as well. At this point, with strength converting to int and vice versa when you class change, it kind of makes sense to just lump all the set pieces together. You really don't need an option to sort by class for that, so maybe even an additional tab, something like that. And again, just throwing ideas out, but I think this definitely could use a rework. This is all I've got so far, and I'm sure I'll find other things. Remember, we are just in day 2 of the reign. Now, it's been, I don't know, at least several reigns since we've gone over to the Shadows, as I mentioned, just because we didn't have interest, but I'm glad I came back, because I think a lot of this is going to need, really have some opinions that, not just from myself, but from other people in the community that have had more opportunities to be Immortal or found things during their reign. I missed Corvus last night because of Warband raids. I believe I've done the latest revamp of Corvus the last time. I don't remember it completely in detail, but I do want to make sure that I hit that on Wednesday. So I will check that out on Wednesday and give any feedback if I have it. One other tidbit I want to share is the level requirement of the items within the vault. Now you can see on the piece here, and I'll click on it just to make this a little bit more visible. But down at the bottom, you can see the required level is in fact going to be 10 levels higher than what the server paragon will be on the day that you would receive this item. This used to be 14 levels, and then when the server paragon changes were implemented in, this obviously was adjusted. However, another thing that I'd like to consider here would be, what if we just remove the level requirement of these items? This would create a little more competition between members of the Immortals, as well as just making the appeal greater. Potentially when the difficulty changes, you may have people interested in timing their reign, which adds another dynamic to clans battling in the free-for-all. A lot of servers have 2 strong alliances that are on opposite sides of each other, and they just rotate back and forth. Well, this may cause alliances to want to kind of sync up and potentially duke it out for that timing and getting these increased items as the difficulty changes. I just think, like I said, this would be an extra dynamic, potentially increase the appeal and give people a reason to kind of be Immortal. So there's some options here, I think, as well as many other things I haven't thought of in just the first 2 days. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch, and have a great day.